Welcome to our deep dive all about growth hacking. We're going to be taking a really close look at Sean Ellis's book, Hacking Growth, today. We got some really interesting excerpts from it. And I think this will be a lot of fun. We're going to figure out what goes into making a truly must-have product. And we'll dive into how companies like Dropbox, Facebook, Airbnb, and more use these techniques to really skyrocket their user base and revenue. So get ready for some serious aha moments.
Yeah, it's amazing how growth hacking really changes the focus. Traditional marketing goes one way, but growth hacking is really all about this data-driven experimental approach. And in this deep dive, we'll break it all down, give you a really solid understanding of the core principles behind it. We'll even get into how, seemingly tiny changes can unlock huge gains.
Okay, so let's start with just the basics. What is growth hacking? It's kind of like a tech world buzzword, right?
Yeah, it can sound that way. But it's definitely more than just a buzzword. It's a whole mindset. Think of it this way. It's like applying a scientific approach to growth. You're constantly looking at data, running experiments, and collaborating across different teams just to see what actually works. It's not about finding that one magic solution.
So instead of like a silver bullet, it's more like that buckshot approach.
Yeah.
Lots of small wins that add up to big results.
Exactly. It's about accumulating those smaller wins that end up making a huge difference. The book uses Dropbox as a great example. They had an awesome product.
Right.
But at first, they had trouble growing beyond those initial early adopters, like the tech-savvy folks who were always the first to jump on new things.
Right, and plus they had some pretty big competition to deal with.
Oh, for sure. There were companies like Mozy and Carbonite already out there. And then you had these giants like Microsoft and Google just waiting in the wings, ready to jump in. So the pressure was definitely on.
So how did Dropbox hack their growth with all those challenges?
Well, one of their key strategies was the must-have score. And this was actually developed by Sean Ellis himself. It's a way to figure out if you've really hit that product market fit using surveys.
Okay, now that's where it gets interesting. How does this must-have score thing work?
It all comes down to one powerful question. You ask users, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product?
Okay, so if a lot of people say they'd be very disappointed, that's a good sign, right? It means you got something they really need.
Exactly. And Dropbox's scores were through the roof. This was especially true for the users who had really spent time with the product, the ones who'd explored all its features. It was a strong signal they were onto something big.
So they knew they had a winner, a must-have product.
Yeah.
How do they get the word out? How do you reach a larger audience?
They got really smart with their referral program. It wasn't just a basic tell a friend kind of thing. They actually gave free storage space to both the person referring and the new user.
Ah, so everyone wins. Classic. What kind of results did they see from that?
It was huge. This program alone caused a 60% jump in signups. But the real lesson here is that they didn't just set it up and forget about it.
Yeah, I was going to say they were probably always tweaking things and improving it, right?
Absolutely. They were constantly A/B testing everything. The message itself, the details of the offer, even the design of that referral interface.
So they were obsessed with the data, always looking at those A/B test results.
Exactly. That's the heart of growth hacking, this data-driven experimental approach. And the book also talks about how Facebook used a similar approach in their early days. They had a growth team, it was called the Growth Circle, and they were all about using data to experiment.
And I'm guessing that really helped Facebook grow from its small initial user base.
Big time. That proved the value of this approach. I mean, even Mark Zuckerberg invested heavily in their efforts, so clearly he saw the potential in this data-driven way of thinking about growth.
So far, we've been talking about tech giants, but does growth hacking only apply to Silicon Valley startups?
Not at all. That's one of the most interesting things about these principles. They work for companies of all sizes and across all sorts of industries. The book even uses Walmart as an example.
Walmart. Really? That's not exactly the first name that pops into my head when I think of growth hacking. How did they get into this?
Well, Walmart realized that their biggest advantage wasn't just low prices, it was all the data they had, mountains of it, and they tapped into that with their Savings Catcher app.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What's the Savings Catcher all about?
It lets customers scan their receipts, and then if a competitor advertised a lower price for anything they bought, the app automatically gave them cash back.
So they're using tech to keep customers engaged and also undercut their competitors. That's pretty smart.
Exactly. It was a brilliant way to turn data into a win-win for Walmart and their customers. It shows how growth hacking can take so many forms and be used by any company willing to experiment.
But it can't always be a guaranteed success, right? I mean, there must be some pitfalls to avoid.
You're absolutely right. The book talks about a company called Branch Out. They were trying to be the LinkedIn killer on Facebook, and it didn't go so well.
Oh, what happened there? Did they miss a step somewhere?
Yeah, their problem was they were too focused on getting lots of users without thinking enough about the experience people were having with the product itself. It went viral at first and got a ton of users.
But then people realized it wasn't that useful and they just stopped using the app.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of chasing numbers without thinking about the long-term value people are getting.
So it's not just about chasing numbers, it's about building something people actually find valuable and want to keep using.
Precisely. The book talks about this idea of focusing on the aha moment. That's the moment when someone truly understands and experiences the value of what you've created. That's what turns those early adopters into loyal, engaged users.
Can you give me some examples of those aha moments done right?
Think about Yelp. They have all those trusted community reviews. Or eBay, where you can find those unique auction finds. Or that feeling of instant connection you get when you first start using Facebook. Or the convenience of Uber, always being there when you need a ride. Each of these products quickly shows its value to the user.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do companies figure out what that aha moment is and make sure it happens?
Data plays a big role. Looking at user behavior can reveal those hidden preferences and help companies focus their product on what truly matters. The book gives the example of Instagram.
Didn't Instagram start as something completely different?
It did. It began as this complex location-based social network called Bourbon, but by digging into user data, the founders realized people were mostly using it for photo sharing.
So they simplified it, focused on that one core feature, and the rest is history.
Exactly. They changed direction based on what the data was telling them, and it was a massive success. Another example is Pinterest. They initially,
Pinterest pivot.
well, they started as a mobile commerce app, but they saw people were actually using it to collect and share pictures of things they like.
And then they switched to become the visual discovery platform we know and love today. That's so interesting.
Right. It shows the power of being adaptable and letting data lead the way.
This is all great, but how do companies even choose which growth experiments to try first? It feels like there's so many possibilities.
That's where the idea of the North Star metric comes in. It's a single metric that sums up the core value your product delivers.
So it's like your guiding star for choosing the right experiments.
Exactly. It's the metric that matters more than anything else. For WhatsApp, it was messages sent. For Airbnb, it was nights booked.
So instead of getting caught up in vanity metrics like website visits or downloads, you focus on the metric that really drives growth.
You got it. It's
Yeah.
about putting your effort where it really counts.
This is starting to click for me now.
Yeah.
But doesn't all this focus on numbers make you lose sight of the human element a bit?
Mm.
How do you balance data with really understanding your users?
That's an excellent point. Data is crucial, but it only tells you so much. You've got to combine it with qualitative research, actually talking to your users and getting their feedback directly.
So you need to get out there and talk to people, get their perspective.
Exactly. The book gives an example of how Twitter figured out why some people had stopped using the platform and then come back. They called these users comatose users.
Comatose users. Wow. That's an interesting way to put it. What did they learn from those users?
Well, they discovered that the ratio of followers to people a user was following was really important for conveying Twitter's unique value. Too many people following you back, and it feels like every other social network. Too few, and it's just a newsfeed.
So they had to find that sweet spot where it's both social and informative, right?
Oh, precisely. And that's something they wouldn't have figured out from just looking at numbers. Talking to users revealed those nuances.
Wow, we've already covered so much. And we're just getting started with this deep dive into growth hacking.
There's so much more to explore.
Let's take a break here and pick things back up in part 2, where we'll go even deeper into the world of growth hacking. We're back and ready to keep going with this deep dive into growth hacking with Sean Ellis's Hacking Growth. We talked a lot about product market fit and those key aha moments for your users in part 1. What else did you find in the book that our listeners should know?
One of the things that really stuck with me was how much they talk about language, like the actual words you use. It's not just about having a great product. You really have to get the message right so it resonates with the people you're trying to reach.
Right. So you're talking about what the book calls language market fit.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right words and phrases, the ones that really connect with your target market. And honestly, getting that part right can make a huge difference. It can affect how many customers you get and how quickly they start using your product.
Can you think of a good example from the book, a company that really nailed this language market fit thing.
Oh, yeah. They talk about Upworthy and how they test their headlines. They're known for writing headlines that really grab your attention and make you want to click.
Yeah, I've seen those headlines. They're all over social media. Kind of like clickbait, but in a good way.
Yeah, you could say that, but it's not random. It's not like they just throw something out there. They have this whole system, they call it A/B testing, where they write different headlines for the same article and then use tools like Bitly links and Facebook ads to track which one performs best.
So it's not just gut feeling. They're actually testing these headlines on real people.
That's right. They found that even changing just a word or two can have a big impact on how many people click. It's a really good example of using data to improve your messaging.
It's a good reminder that the right headline can be super powerful. But how does this apply to products or services, not just writing articles?
The idea is the same. You need to test and refine your message to see what works for your audience. One thing that can help is paying attention to the language your customers are already using.
So you actually listen to how your customers describe your product, right? In their reviews or on social media.
Exactly. They're telling you how they see your product, and that's super valuable. Okay, so we've talked about product market fit and aha moments and language market fit. What's next?
Well, once you've got a product people love and you're communicating it well, I guess the next step is figuring out where to find your customers.
Yep. And growth hacking uses data to answer that age-old question, where are our customers?
And it feels like there are just so many options these days. How do you even start to narrow it down?
Well, the book suggests looking at each channel in terms of a few things. Things like cost, targeting, control, scale, and how long it takes to see results.
So you'd evaluate things like content marketing, search engine optimization, paid ads, social media, email marketing, all based on those criteria.
Exactly. Some channels might be cheap, but don't let you target your audience well. Others might give you a lot of control, but take forever to show results. You have to find what aligns with your overall strategy.
Like finding the right tool for the job. Makes sense. Once you've identified those channels, what then?
Then it's all about optimizing them. You keep testing and refining your message, your targeting, your creative, just to get the most out of each channel.
It seems like a lot of this boils down to really understanding how your customers think. What makes them tick?
You're right. And one of the most powerful psychological principles at play in growth hacking is this thing called viral loops.
Everyone wants their product to go viral, but it seems like this, I don't know, magic trick almost. How can you actually engineer something like that?
Well, the book breaks down the science of it. It's all about designing things that naturally make people want to share your product with their friends. And there are three things to think about here. They call them payload, conversion rate, and frequency.
Okay, so what do those terms mean? Payload, conversion rate, frequency. Break those down for me.
Sure. Payload is the number of people who could potentially see your message when it's shared. So say you share something on Facebook, the payload is the number of people who see that post.
Okay, so payload is reach. What about conversion rate?
That's how many people who see your message actually do what you want them to do. Maybe they click a link or sign up for your service. Like if 100 people see your post and 10 of them take that action, that's a 10% conversion rate.
Got it. So reach and effectiveness. What's frequency then?
Frequency is about how often people see your message. If you send an email every day, that's high frequency. If you only email once a month, that's low frequency.
So if you want something to go viral, you'd want high payload, high conversion rate, and high frequency.
Well, in theory, yes. But it's not always about getting all three as high as possible. Sometimes it's about finding the right balance. They give the example of Hotmail.
Oh, wasn't that the one with the message in every email signature?
Exactly. They added this simple line to every email that said, get your free email at Hotmail.
That's so simple, but it's brilliant. Every email sent from a Hotmail account became an ad.
Right. The payload for each individual email was pretty small, just the person receiving it, but the conversion rate was high. People wanted free email. And the frequency, well, people were seeing that message all the time.
So it just spread naturally, like wildfire. Do you know of any more recent examples of companies doing this well? Using viral loops, I mean.
Oh, tons. Dropbox gives you more storage space when you refer a friend. Uber gives discounts to writers and drivers who refer people. Those are viral loops in action.
Okay, so you've got new customers, you've got your messaging figured out, maybe you've even gone viral, but the work's not done right.
Nope. Getting customers is just the first step. The next challenge is activating them, getting them to actually engage and use your product.
So activation's all about that aha moment, right? The point where they see the value and start using it regularly.
Exactly. And one of the keys to successful activation is making that initial experience really smooth, especially the onboarding process when someone first signs up.
Yeah. First impressions are everything online. What are some things companies can do to make onboarding better?
One of the biggest things is to make signing up easy. No one wants to fill out a million forms just to try an app.
Oh, I hate that. When they ask for way too much info up front.
Right. So allowing people to sign in with their Google or Facebook account is a huge win.
Yeah, love that. One click and you're in. No need to remember a new password.
Exactly. No more barrier to entry. And once they're in, you want to guide them toward those key features that will deliver that aha moment. Maybe you use a personalized onboarding experience, tutorials, or even little prompts that highlight the benefits.
Like you're holding their hand and showing them exactly how to get the most out of your product.
Hmm.
So you've got the users, you've activated them, they're using your product, happy as can be. Is that it then? The finish line?
Not quite. Now comes retention. Getting customers is great, getting them engaged is great, but if you can't keep them coming back, it's all for nothing.
Yeah, it's all about building loyalty.
Exactly. You want to turn casual users into superfans, and that means understanding habit formation.
So how do you make something so good, so addictive, that people make it a habit to use it all the time?
The book talks about something called the hook model. It's a framework by Nir Eyal for understanding how products create habits.
I've heard of that. Can you remind me how it works?
It's a four-step cycle. Trigger, action, reward, investment. The trigger makes you want to do something. The action is you doing it. The reward is what you get out of it. And the investment is something you do that makes you more likely to repeat the whole cycle.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about social media. The trigger might be a notification, or maybe you're just bored. The action is opening the app. The reward is seeing what your friends are up to or finding something interesting to read. And the investment could be liking a post, commenting, or following someone new.
Oh yeah, I know that cycle all too well.
Right. And it's not just social media. Email does it. Shopping does it. Even video games. They're all designed to keep you engaged.
So how can people use this hook model idea to get customers to come back for more?
Well, you can start by looking at your data to see how people are using your product. Then you can play around with different triggers, rewards, and investments. See what keeps people coming back.
You give me some concrete examples of that?
Sure. Personalized recommendations are a good one. By looking at what someone's bought or looked at before, you can suggest things they might like.
Like when Amazon says people who bought this also bought.
Exactly. It's all about making the experience more relevant to each person. You can also use things like loyalty programs and game-like features to reward people for coming back.
So the goal is to create this positive feedback loop. The more they use it, the more value they get, and the more likely they are to come back for more.
Exactly. It's understanding what drives people to form habits and using those insights to create products they truly enjoy using.
Okay, so we've talked about getting customers, getting them engaged, and keeping them coming back. Is that all there is to it? Is that sustainable growth?
Almost. There's one more piece. Monetization. All this work we've been talking about. It's all about making money.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
How do you turn all those loyal users into paying customers?
That's where it all comes together. And, you guessed it, growth hacking has a data-driven approach to that as well.
Okay, color me intrigued. How do you approach monetization from a data-driven perspective?
First, you have to know how you're going to make money. Are you selling products, services? Are you using advertising or a subscription model?
So different models call for different strategies. What are some common ways to get more money from each customer?
Personalization's a big one, just like we talked about with retention. You can look at what people like and recommend things they'll want to buy.
So it's like those Amazon recommendations again, but now we're trying to get them to actually buy something.
Yep. Tailor the experience, make it relevant. Another big one is pricing.
Pricing. That seems tricky. You have to find that balance between giving customers a good deal and making sure your business stays profitable.
Exactly. And just like with messaging and design, you can use A/B testing to experiment with different pricing models.
So like testing different price points or different types of discounts or even just how you present the pricing information.
Yeah, all of that. Even small changes to the way you price things can have a big impact on your bottom line.
This is all making sense. But what about products that are usually free? How do you get people to pay for something they're used to getting for nothing?
That's a tough one. The book calls it the penny gap challenge. One way to bridge that gap is to use what's called a freemium model.
Freemium, isn't that where you have a free version of your product and then charge for extra features?
Exactly. You can attract a lot of users with the free version. and hopefully some of them will like it enough to upgrade. The book talks about this workout app, the 7-Minute Workout.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. It's super popular. What did they do?
Well, at first it was a paid app, but they weren't getting that many downloads, so they switched to freemium. The basic workout was free. But if you wanted things like workout tracking, custom routines, or extra exercises, you had to pay.
And that worked.
It was huge. Downloads took off, and even though most people stuck with the free version, they made a lot more money overall.
Wow, that's interesting. Sometimes giving something away for free can actually be the best way to make money.
It can seem counterintuitive, but it works. Okay, so we've talked about the 4 main parts of growth hacking: acquisition, activation, retention, and monetization. What else do we need to think about?
Hit me with those growth hacking gems. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into hacking growth. So far, we've talked about everything from understanding those aha moments to crafting a killer message, building those viral loops, and even making some money. What else can we learn from Sean Ellis and Morgan Brown about creating that unstoppable growth?
You know, one thing they emphasize throughout the book is that even with a great strategy, growth isn't always this smooth upward climb. I mean, every company, even the really successful ones, they're going to face bumps in the road, setbacks, challenges.
It's a good reminder that there's no magic formula. Even if you've got all these growth hacking tools and tactics, things can still go wrong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes things happen that you just can't predict, like the market changes or a competitor does something unexpected. Those kinds of things can really throw a wrench in your plans.
So how do you deal with those inevitable bumps in the road? How do you avoid those growth stalls, the ones that feel like you'll never get out of?
The book stresses that you have to stay agile, keep a close eye on your data, and be ready to change things quickly when they're not working. They also say you shouldn't get too comfortable relying on just one channel or strategy.
So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread out your efforts and be ready to pivot when the data tells you to.
Exactly. And you have to remember, growth stalls can happen for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes things are out of your control, like maybe a competitor comes up with something new or people's tastes change. The important thing is to figure out why things have stalled as quickly as possible so you can do something about it.
So growth hacking is kind of like problem solving. You're not just taking advantage of opportunities. You're also figuring out how to get past obstacles.
That's a great way to put it. It's being proactive and reactive. You're always adjusting based on the data and what the market's telling you.
Okay, so stay agile, watch the metrics, be ready to adapt. Anything else? What should companies keep in mind as they try to grow?
One thing the book warns against is losing sight of your core product or service in that pursuit of growth. It's easy to get distracted by every new trend or shiny new thing, but staying focused on what you do best is crucial in the long run.
It's like resisting the urge to chase every shiny object. Instead, focus on what makes your product special.
Yeah, exactly. Remember why you started this whole thing in the first place and make sure everything you do to grow is aligned with that.
This is all really interesting, but I'm curious how the authors of Hacking Growth use these principles themselves.
Actually, they do talk about that. They share a behind-the-scenes look at how they used growth hacking to grow their own company, growthhackers.com.
Oh, I love when people do that, like growth hacking inception. So how did they use their own ideas to grow their own business?
Well, they reached a point where their growth had basically flatlined, and they realized they needed to re-energize things.
It happens to everyone, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to take a step back and see what's working, what's not.
Right. They went back to the basics, really focused on those core principles of growth hacking, and they set ambitious goals for experimentation. They made growth their top priority, and it showed in every decision they made.
They practiced what they preached.
They really did. And it paid off. They were able to get people more engaged and increase their growth rate in a pretty short amount of time.
That's great. What's the big takeaway from their experience?
I think it shows that growth is an ongoing thing. Even when you think you have it all figured out, you can always get better.
Always be hacking. I love that. It's a good motto for any company, no matter how big or small.
It's all about learning and experimenting, never being afraid to try new things.
Well said.
Yeah.
This has been a truly fascinating look into the world of growth hacking. We covered so much, from those basic ideas to real-world examples, and even the author's own journey.
I feel like we just scratched the surface, but I hope our listeners have some good ideas to apply to their own businesses now.
I'm sure they do. Remember, it's all about combining data, experimentation, and focusing on giving your customers something truly valuable.
And don't be afraid to experiment and try new things.
Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep those growth engines running.
Happy hacking.